Alpha King confronts Omega during the Jade ceremony as the sacred bell tolls only for her arrival. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Lily Thompson stood at the edge of the Moonspire Temple, her heart pounding in her chest. The sacred Jade ceremony was a momentous occasion, yet she couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. Everyone had gathered, adorned in their finest robes, their eyes shining with excitement, but Lily felt like a shadow among them. Her simple, worn dress, a pale contrast to the rich silk and fur of the others, made her feel invisible. The whispers of the crowd swirled around her like a constant buzz, but none of them were speaking to her. As the Omega of her pack, she had always been overlooked, always dismissed as weak and unworthy. The sacred bell tolled loudly, its echo vibrating through the temple, a sound so ancient it seemed to hold the weight of centuries. The bell's call was said to announce the arrival of the Alpha King, and with it, the beginning of the ceremony. Lily glanced up, catching a glimpse of the towering doors as they creaked open. A hush fell over the crowd. All eyes turned to the figure that appeared. Maxwell Stone, the Alpha King. His presence was undeniable, a force that seemed to pull the very air around him. Tall, with broad shoulders and a gaze that could freeze anyone in their tracks, Maxwell moved with the grace and power of a born leader. His black cloak billowed behind him as he strode into the temple, his silver-gray eyes scanning the crowd. The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. Lily held her breath, a sense of awe and dread mixing within her. He was the one everyone had come to see, the one everyone hoped to be chosen by, but she knew better than to dream of such things. As the Alpha King made his way to the center of the temple, the sacred bell tolled again, marking the beginning of the ceremony. Maxwell's gaze swept over the gathered crowd, but when it landed on Lily, something shifted. His steps faltered, just for a moment, as if her presence had caught his attention in a way he hadn't expected. The crowd around her seemed to blur, the noise fading as the world narrowed to just her and him. Maxwell's eyes, cold and calculating one moment, softened the next, and Lily's heart skipped a beat. She felt a strange pull toward him, a connection she couldn't explain. The sacred bell rang once more, its sound hanging in the air, and Maxwell took a step toward her. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the moment that would decide the fate of the ceremony. Maxwell stopped just in front of Lily, towering over her with an intensity that made her feel small. His silver eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. The tension was palpable, and Lily's pulse raced in her ears. She had never felt so exposed in her life. But then, Maxwell did something unexpected. He knelt before her, lowering his head in a gesture of respect. The crowd gasped, unable to believe what they were witnessing. In that moment, it was clear that something had changed. The Alpha King, the most powerful man in the realm, had chosen her. "You are mine," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of destiny. Lily stood frozen, unable to comprehend the words. The sacred bell tolled once more, its sound signaling the end of the ceremony, but for Lily, it felt like the beginning of something far greater. The crowd erupted into murmurs, but Lily only had eyes for Maxwell, the Alpha King, whose gaze never left hers. Ivy stood at the edge of the grand hall, her breath catching in her throat as the Alpha King, Maxwell Stone, continued to kneel before her. The crowd had fallen into stunned silence, their gazes locked on the scene unfolding before them. Her heart pounded in her chest, and for a moment, it felt as though the world around her had vanished entirely. Maxwell, the Alpha King, the most powerful figure in the realm, had chosen her. She could hardly believe it. She, a mere Omega, had caught the eye of the ruler of all. The weight of the moment settled upon her like a heavy cloak, and she struggled to steady herself, her knees threatening to buckle beneath her. His silver-gray eyes, so intense and unyielding, met hers with a gaze that seemed to pierce through her very soul. She had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable, yet there was something comforting about the way he looked at her. It was as if he saw her, truly saw her, and not the broken, discarded Omega that everyone else had always dismissed. I choose you, Maxwell said softly, his voice carrying through the hall like a low, melodic hum. Ivy's breath caught in her throat at the sound of his words. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times in her mind, but never had she thought it would actually come to pass. Never had she thought she would be the one to be chosen. She had always been told she was not enough, too weak, too insignificant. The others in her pack had always looked down upon her, dismissing her as nothing more than an afterthought. But now, the Alpha King was kneeling before her, his words declaring her worth. The crowd remained silent, unsure how to react. It was unprecedented for an Omega, especially one as meek and unnoticed as Ivy, to be chosen by the Alpha King. The whispers started to grow, spreading like wildfire. The murmurs of disbelief and awe echoed through the grand hall. Ivy could feel the weight of their eyes, but she refused to look away from Maxwell. She had to hold herself steady, had to find her voice amidst the chaos of emotions swirling within her. Maxwell slowly rose to his feet, never breaking eye contact with Ivy. His towering figure seemed even more imposing now, yet there was an unexpected gentleness in his movements. He reached out, his hand extended toward her, and Ivy felt her heart skip a beat. She hesitated for a moment, unsure whether this was some sort of dream, but then, almost as if guided by instinct, she placed her trembling hand in his. The instant their hands touched, something surged between them, a connection, a spark that coursed through her body like a jolt of electricity. Her pulse quickened, and she felt warmth spread through her, radiating from where their hands met. She had never felt anything like it. You are my mate, Maxwell said, his voice steady and unwavering. The words sent a wave of warmth rushing through Ivy, but also a twinge of fear. How could this be real? How could someone like her, an Omega, truly be his mate? It felt impossible, yet in the depth of his gaze, she saw nothing but certainty. The bond between them was undeniable. Ivy's thoughts raced as Maxwell guided her toward the center of the hall. The crowd parted to make way for them, their eyes wide with shock and awe. It was a moment unlike any other, a turning point in her life that would forever change her. As they reached the center of the hall, Maxwell turned to face the gathering crowd. His presence filled the space, a force that commanded respect. This Omega, he said, his voice booming across the hall, is now mine. She is my Luna, and I will protect her with my life. The words sent a ripple of disbelief through the crowd. Ivy felt the weight of his declaration, the weight of his protection. She was no longer just an Omega, no longer a forgotten soul in the shadows. She was his, and he was hers. In that moment, everything changed. The Alpha King had chosen her, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly seen. Ivy's heart raced as Maxwell led her through the grand hall, her hand still held firmly in his. The murmurs of the crowd faded into the background, their disbelief palpable in the air. She couldn't believe this was happening. She, the unnoticed, the dismissed Omega, had been chosen by the Alpha King himself. As they walked toward the center of the room, Ivy's mind swirled with a mix of emotions, uncertainty, fear, and an unexpected sense of belonging. She had never imagined that something like this would ever happen to her. She had always been told she wasn't enough, that she was too weak, too invisible to ever matter. Yet here she was, standing beside the most powerful man in the kingdom, his eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that both terrified and captivated her. Maxwell's grip on her hand was warm, steady. It was a contrast to the storm of emotions inside her. She had never felt such a connection before, and yet it felt like something she had always known, something destined. As they reached the center of the hall, Maxwell stopped and turned to face the crowd. His presence filled the room, commanding attention. Ivy could feel the weight of the moment settling upon her. This was no longer just a ceremony, it was her new reality. Maxwell raised his voice, and it echoed through the hall. "This is Lily Thompson," he announced, his tone firm, yet there was an undeniable tenderness in his words. "She is my Luna, and from this day forward, no one will harm her, no one will speak ill of her. She is my equal, my mate, and I will protect her with everything I am." The words rang out, and Ivy's breath caught in her throat. She had never heard anyone speak of her with such conviction, with such certainty. The crowd was silent, the tension hanging in the air like a thick fog. Ivy could feel the weight of their gazes on her, but she didn't look away from Maxwell. There was something in his eyes, something that reassured her. She wasn't alone anymore. Maxwell gently guided her to a seat beside him, his hand never leaving hers. Ivy sat, her heart still pounding in her chest, and for the first time, she allowed herself to feel a sense of peace. Maxwell had chosen her. He hadn't chosen the strong, the powerful, the perfect. He had chosen her, the Omega who had always been seen as too weak, too ordinary. And for reasons she still didn't fully understand, he saw something in her that no one else had ever seen. "Are you all right?" Maxwell's voice broke through her thoughts. She looked up to find him watching her closely, his expression softening. Ivy nodded, but the words caught in her throat. She couldn't speak, couldn't explain the flood of emotions that were crashing over her. Maxwell smiled, a genuine, warm smile that made her heart flutter in her chest. "I know this is a lot to take in," he said softly. "But know this, Lily. You are not alone. I will be by your side, always." The sincerity in his voice was undeniable, and for the first time in her life, Ivy felt a spark of hope. This was her new life. This was her chance at something she had never dreamed possible. As the ceremony continued, Ivy couldn't help but steal glances at Maxwell. He was everything she had imagined, powerful, intimidating, yet with a gentleness that she hadn't expected. He was a man of contrasts, a ruler with a heart that seemed capable of great love. She had always wondered if there was more to life than what she had known. She had wondered if there was a place for someone like her in this world. And now, standing beside the Alpha King, Ivy realized that there might just be. The rest of the night was a blur of conversations and formalities, but Ivy hardly noticed. Her thoughts were consumed with Maxwell and the future they would build together. She still didn't fully understand how or why he had chosen her, but for the first time, she felt like she belonged. She wasn't just an Omega. She was his Luna, and that meant everything. As the evening drew to a close, Maxwell leaned in close, his breath warm against her ear. "We will face everything together," he whispered, his words filled with promise. Ivy smiled, a small but genuine smile. "Together," she whispered back. Ivy sat in the quiet solitude of the chamber, the weight of the day's events settling in her chest. The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from the flickering flames of the fire in the hearth. The sound of the crackling fire was the only noise, a comforting, rhythmic noise that soothed her rattled nerves. She ran her fingers over the smooth fabric of her dress, still adjusting to the reality of what had happened. Maxwell, the Alpha King, had chosen her. She, a lowly Omega, had been chosen to be his Luna. The thought still felt like a dream, an impossible reality that she could hardly wrap her mind around. She had always been overlooked, dismissed as nothing more than a weak, insignificant Omega. And now, she was the chosen mate of the Alpha King. She let out a soft breath, trying to calm the swirl of thoughts and emotions inside her. She had always felt small, unworthy, but now, standing by Maxwell's side, she felt something awakening inside her. It was a strange sensation, like the first stirrings of a new life, like she was no longer the person she had once been. Maxwell had given her a place, a purpose. He had seen her for who she truly was, not for the weakness others had always seen. But still, doubts lingered in her mind. Could she really live up to the role of Luna? Could she be the partner the powerful Alpha King needed? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. She looked up, startled, before calling out, "Come in." The door creaked open, and Maxwell entered the room, his presence as commanding as ever. But this time, there was a softness in his expression, a warmth in his eyes that made Ivy's heart flutter. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," Maxwell said, his voice low and gentle. "No, not at all," Ivy replied, offering him a small smile. Maxwell moved toward her, his footsteps quiet but sure. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze never leaving hers. "I wanted to check on you," he said softly. "I know today has been overwhelming." Ivy nodded, her heart racing at the sound of his voice, at the intensity of his gaze. "It has been," she admitted. "But I'm okay." Maxwell's lips curled into a small smile, his eyes softening. "You are stronger than you think," he said. "I know this is all new, but you are more than capable, Ivy. I chose you because I believe in you. His words, though simple, carried a weight of sincerity that settled deep in Ivy's chest. She had never heard such words spoken to her before, not in the way he spoke them. It was as if he truly saw her, not as an omega, not as a weakness, but as someone who had value. Someone who could stand beside him, not behind him. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Maxwell stepped closer, closing the distance between them. He reached out, his hand hovering near hers, as if asking for permission. Ivy hesitated for only a moment before extending her hand toward his. The moment their fingers touched, a spark of warmth spread through her, a connection that felt deeper than anything she had ever known. Maxwell looked down at their intertwined hands, his thumb gently brushing over her skin. I won't rush you, Ivy, he said softly. But I want you to know that you're not alone in this. I will always be here, by your side. Ivy swallowed the lump in her throat, feeling a surge of emotion rise within her. For the first time, she felt truly seen, truly understood. Maxwell had chosen her, and in his presence, she felt a sense of peace she had never known. Thank you, she repeated, her voice stronger this time. I don't know if I deserve all this, but I promise I'll do my best. Maxwell smiled again, his eyes filled with something she couldn't quite name, something warm, something reassuring. You already are, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And that's enough for me. Ivy felt the weight of his words sink into her heart, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she truly belonged. Not as an omega, not as a discarded soul, but as someone worthy, someone loved. And in that moment, she knew she was ready for whatever came next. Together, they would face everything, side by side. Ivy sat beside Maxwell in the royal gardens, the warmth of the sun on her skin contrasting with the coolness of the stone bench beneath her. She could feel the soft breeze rustling the leaves in the trees, a gentle reminder that, for the first time in her life, she was no longer trapped by the weight of her past. Her mind wandered back to the ceremony, to the moment Maxwell had declared her his Luna. Even now, the words echoed in her mind, making her heart race. You are mine. His voice had been firm, yet there had been a tenderness in it, a promise of something deeper than she could have ever imagined. The path that had led her here had been anything but simple, but as she sat beside him now, she realized that it had been worth every step. Maxwell had given her something she had never thought possible, a place to belong. As she glanced over at him, Ivy felt her chest tighten with the emotions swirling inside her. He was more than just the powerful Alpha King. He was a man of depth, of strength, but also of surprising kindness. He had shown her more kindness than anyone ever had. She had expected to feel like an outsider in his world, but instead, she had found a sense of peace she had never known. Maxwell turned his gaze toward her, his silver eyes warm as they met hers. How are you feeling? He asked, his voice soft. Ivy hesitated for a moment, unsure how to express the storm of emotions inside her. She had never been good with words, never been able to articulate what she felt, but she knew she had to try. I'm not sure, she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. It's all so overwhelming. Maxwell nodded, understanding. He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. I know it's a lot to take in, he said. But remember, you don't have to go through this alone. I'm here for you, Ivy. Always. His words were a balm to her soul, soothing the uncertainties that had been gnawing at her since the ceremony. She looked at their joined hands, the warmth of his touch grounding her in a way nothing else could. Thank you, she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. For everything. Maxwell smiled, his eyes brightening with a hint of pride. You don't need to thank me, he said. You are my Luna now. We are in this together, every step of the way. Ivy nodded, a sense of calm washing over her as she looked up at him. There was so much she didn't understand yet, so much that still felt unfamiliar, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of what the future held. Maxwell had given her a place in his world, and she knew, deep in her heart, that together they would face whatever challenges came their way. As they sat together in the garden, the quiet moments between them felt like a promise, a vow that they would stand by each other no matter what. Ivy didn't know what her role as Luna would look like, but she knew she would do everything in her power to stand by Maxwell's side and honor the bond they shared. I never imagined this for myself, she admitted, her voice soft but steady. I never thought I would have a place here. Maxwell's expression softened, and he squeezed her hand gently. You always had a place, Ivy. You just had to see it for yourself. Ivy looked up at him, her heart swelling with emotion. For the first time in her life, she felt like she truly belonged. She wasn't just an Omega. She wasn't just someone discarded and overlooked. She was his Luna, and that meant everything. Maxwell leaned in, his voice low and filled with sincerity. You're more than enough, Ivy, he said. You are everything I need. Ivy felt a tear slip down her cheek, but it wasn't from sadness. It was from a feeling she had never known before: love, acceptance, and the warmth of a future she had never dared to dream of. Thank you, she whispered again, her voice thick with emotion. Maxwell smiled and pulled her into a gentle embrace. As they sat there, surrounded by the beauty of the garden, Ivy knew that this was just the beginning. Together, they would face whatever came next, side by side. Ivy woke the next morning to the soft glow of sunlight spilling across the room, warm and gentle against her skin. For a moment, she lay still, listening to the quiet hum of the palace stirring awake. It felt strange, almost unreal, to open her eyes in a place so peaceful. Her entire life had been built around caution, around shrinking herself so she would not draw attention. But here, in this room with its tall windows and soft linens, she felt something she had never allowed herself to feel before: safety. As she stretched slowly, Ivy's gaze drifted to the door, half expecting Maxwell to walk through at any moment. He had said they would face everything together, and she believed him. The thought brought a soft warmth to her chest, a feeling she was still learning to understand. A gentle knock sounded, and Ivy straightened. The door opened, and Maxwell stepped inside, his presence commanding the space effortlessly. Yet his expression softened the moment he saw her awake. Good morning, he said, his voice warm. I did not want to disturb you, but I thought you might like to join me for breakfast in the East Garden. Ivy felt her cheeks warm. She nodded, grateful for the grounding steadiness in his tone. I would like that, she said, her voice soft but sincere. Maxwell offered his hand, and she placed hers in his, feeling that same comforting warmth spread through her like it always did when he touched her. They walked together through the palace corridors, sunlight streaming in through tall windows. Ivy noticed how servants bowed respectfully to Maxwell, but their eyes flicked toward her with curiosity, surprise, and something she could not yet name. She kept close to Maxwell, grateful for the silent reassurance his presence provided. The East Garden was breathtaking. The morning light cast a golden glow over the flowers, their petals shimmering with early dew. A small table had been set beneath an arch of vines, the air fragrant with the scent of blooming jasmine. It is beautiful, Ivy whispered, taking in the scene. Not as beautiful as what I see now, Maxwell replied gently. Ivy's heart stumbled in her chest. She looked down, unsure how to respond, but Maxwell simply pulled a chair out for her, allowing her time to gather her thoughts. As they ate, Maxwell watched her with a thoughtful expression. There is something I want to discuss with you, he said, his voice calm, but layered with meaning. Ivy set her fork down slowly, bracing herself. Do not be afraid, Maxwell added quickly. It is nothing bad. But as my Luna, there are traditions you must know. Responsibilities that come with the role. Ivy felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach, but she nodded. I want to learn, she said. I want to do this right. Maxwell's lips curved in a soft smile. And you will. More than you know. He leaned back slightly, studying her with a quiet intensity. Today, the council will request an audience with us. They are curious about you. Some are worried. Change is difficult for them. Ivy felt her pulse quicken. Do they not want me here? It is not that, Maxwell said carefully. They simply did not expect me to choose a Luna so quickly. And they certainly did not expect, his voice trailed off, but Ivy understood. They had not expected someone like her. An Omega. A girl with no standing, no status, no power in their eyes. Ivy swallowed, her chest tightening. Maxwell reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "Look at me," he said softly. She lifted her gaze slowly. "You are exactly where you are meant to be," he continued. "You have nothing to prove to them. The only approval you ever need is your own, and mine, and you already have both." Ivy's eyes softened, her heart steadying under his words. "I will stand with you," she said quietly. "Through whatever comes." Maxwell's smile deepened, warm and proud. "And I with you, Ivy. Always." For the first time since becoming Luna, Ivy did not feel afraid of what the day would bring. With Maxwell by her side, she felt ready for anything. Ivy walked beside Maxwell through the grand halls of the palace, her heart still racing from the morning's events. The meeting with the council was soon, and the weight of what was about to happen pressed heavily on her chest. She had never been one to speak in front of others, especially not in such a formal setting. Maxwell had assured her that she was ready, but the nerves still fluttered in her stomach. As they reached the large oak doors that led to the council chamber, Maxwell turned to her, his expression soft but serious. "Remember, Ivy, you are not alone in this," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "You are my Luna, and you have as much say in what happens here as anyone else." Ivy nodded, trying to gather her courage. She had spent so many years being dismissed, overlooked, and now she was about to walk into a room full of the kingdom's most powerful people. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Maxwell gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "I believe in you," he said, his silver eyes full of warmth and confidence. "You've already shown your strength. This is just another step." With a deep breath, Ivy squared her shoulders and walked into the chamber by his side. The council members were already seated, their eyes flicking to them as they entered. Ivy felt the weight of their stares, the judgment, but she refused to let it break her. She would stand tall, just as Maxwell had taught her. The room was vast, filled with dark wood and ancient stone. The flickering light from the chandeliers above cast long shadows on the walls. At the far end of the room sat the elder members of the council, their expressions stern and unreadable. Maxwell led her to a seat beside him at the head of the table. The council's leader, Lord Ashford, a tall man with graying hair and a face lined with age, cleared his throat. "Alpha King Maxwell," he said, his voice formal and commanding, "it is an honor to have you here today, and we trust you have brought your Luna to discuss matters of importance." Ivy glanced at Maxwell, his hand resting on the table, fingers tapping gently. He gave her a reassuring smile before turning back to the council. "Yes, Lord Ashford," Maxwell said, his tone calm but firm. "I have brought Ivy here because she is just as much a part of this kingdom as any of you. She will help shape the future of our people." The council exchanged skeptical glances, but Maxwell did not waver. Ivy felt a surge of pride at his words, but she could feel the pressure mounting. She had to prove herself, she had to show them that she wasn't just some weak Omega. She was Maxwell's Luna, and she had a role to play in this kingdom. Lord Ashford's gaze flicked toward Ivy. "And what do you have to say for yourself, Luna?" he asked, his voice sharp. Ivy straightened in her seat, meeting his gaze directly. She took a breath, steadying her nerves, and spoke. "I may not have the strength of an alpha," she began, her voice steady despite the tension, "but I have something just as important. I have the heart and the will to do what's best for our people. I will stand beside Maxwell, and together we will lead." The silence in the room was heavy. Ivy could feel every eye on her, scrutinizing her words. But she didn't falter. She had said what needed to be said. Maxwell's hand gently covered hers, grounding her. "I trust Ivy," he said, his voice unwavering. "She has proven herself to me in ways that none of you can understand. She is my Luna, and she will play a crucial role in our future." The tension in the room was palpable, but slowly, the council members seemed to relax, their stern expressions softening just a fraction. Ivy felt the shift, and it gave her the courage to keep going. "I may not be what you expected," she said, her voice gaining strength, "but I am who Maxwell chose. And I will not let you down." Lord Ashford's eyes lingered on her for a moment longer, but then he nodded, a gesture of acknowledgement. "Very well," he said, his tone still formal but less hostile. "We will see, Luna, how you prove yourself in the days to come." Maxwell stood, his hand still on Ivy's, and turned to leave. "We will prove ourselves," he said, his voice filled with determination. "Together." As they left the chamber, Ivy felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The first hurdle had been cleared. She wasn't just an Omega anymore. She was Maxwell's Luna, and she was ready for whatever came next. Ivy stood by Maxwell as they walked through the palace gardens, the soft sounds of nature surrounding them, a quiet contrast to the stillness of her mind. The meeting with the council had gone better than she expected. The tension had been thick, but Maxwell's support had given her the strength to stand her ground. Despite the lingering doubts, Ivy couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had spoken her truth, and for the first time, it felt like she was being seen not just as the weak Omega, but as Maxwell's equal, his Luna. They reached a secluded part of the garden, a quiet area with flowers blooming in vibrant colors and a small stone fountain bubbling softly. Maxwell stopped, turning to face her. His silver eyes shone with a mixture of pride and affection. "You did well today," he said, his voice low and steady. Ivy's heart fluttered at his words. She smiled faintly, though the weight of everything still felt heavy on her shoulders. "I don't know if I did," she admitted. "I was so nervous, but I felt like I had to speak. I couldn't let them see me as someone beneath them anymore." Maxwell's expression softened, and he reached out to gently take her hand in his. "You did exactly what you needed to do. You showed them you were strong, that you belong by my side. That's all anyone needs to see." Ivy looked down at their intertwined hands, the warmth of his touch grounding her. She had never felt this before, this certainty, this connection. It was as if, for the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible. Maxwell's hand squeezed hers gently. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I know it's not easy, but you have more strength than you realize." Ivy's breath caught in her throat, the weight of his words settling deep inside her. She had never been told she was strong. People had always assumed the opposite. But here, with Maxwell, she felt different. She felt like she could be the person he saw in her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Maxwell smiled, his gaze never leaving hers. "There's more to come," he said, his voice steady but with a hint of something else, something unspoken. "The council will be watching closely. But I know you're ready for whatever comes next." Ivy nodded, though part of her still feared what the future would hold. She wasn't naive, she knew there would be more challenges, more people who doubted her. But in that moment, standing in the garden with Maxwell, she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't alone. "I won't let you down," Ivy said softly. Maxwell's smile deepened, and he stepped closer, his hand gently brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "You never could," he said, his voice warm and reassuring. Ivy felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She believed him. For the first time, she truly believed that she could be the Luna he saw in her. They stood there for a moment, the quiet of the garden surrounding them, the world outside seeming to fade away. Ivy felt a deep sense of peace, a sense of belonging that she had never known before. Maxwell's presence, his unwavering support, had changed everything. He had given her a chance, and she was determined not to waste it. "We'll face everything together," Maxwell said quietly, his words filled with a promise. Ivy looked up at him, her heart swelling with the certainty of those words. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. And for the first time, Ivy felt ready. Ivy stood at the balcony of the palace, looking out over the vast gardens below. The sun had begun to set, casting a soft, golden light across the landscape. The quiet beauty of the scene did little to calm the storm brewing inside her. It had been several days since the council meeting, and though things had settled somewhat, the weight of the responsibility she now carried still hung heavily on her shoulders. She had been thrust into a world she had never imagined, a world where her every move, every word, seemed to be under a microscope. Yet, through all the uncertainty and fear, one thing remained constant: Maxwell. He had been by her side every step of the way, offering quiet reassurance and unwavering support. His belief in her had given her the strength to stand tall when everything inside her screamed to shrink away. As she stood there, gazing out at the fading sunlight, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, and Maxwell appeared in the doorway, his presence filling the space around her. His silver-gray eyes met hers, soft but filled with an intensity she had come to know so well. "I thought I'd find you here," he said, his voice low and steady. Ivy smiled faintly, turning back to look out at the gardens. "I just needed some time to think," she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. Maxwell stepped closer, his gaze never leaving her face. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his tone gentle but curious. Ivy hesitated for a moment, unsure how to put her feelings into words. "I feel overwhelmed," she admitted quietly. "I don't know if I'm ready for everything that's being asked of me. I'm still just me. I'm not sure if I can live up to the expectations." Maxwell's expression softened, and he reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "Ivy," he said softly, "you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you." His words were simple, yet they resonated deeply within her. She had spent so much of her life trying to be what others expected, trying to fit into a mold that was never made for her. But here, with Maxwell, she realized something she had never allowed herself to believe: she didn't have to be perfect to be enough. She didn't have to change who she was to be worthy. Maxwell stepped closer, his free hand lifting to gently touch her cheek. "You are more than enough, Ivy," he continued. "You don't have to carry the weight of this alone. We will face everything together, side by side, just like we always have." Ivy looked up at him, her heart swelling with emotion. The sincerity in his voice, the warmth in his gaze, made her feel safe in a way she had never felt before. She had never imagined that someone like Maxwell would see her, truly see her, and choose her. And now, standing here with him, she knew that together they could face anything. "I won't let you down," Ivy said, her voice steady and full of resolve. Maxwell smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "You never could." They stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of the world feeling lighter in each other's company. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, Ivy knew that the road ahead would not always be easy, but with Maxwell by her side, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would build a future, one step at a time. And for the first time in her life, Ivy felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be.